All right, stupid versus the spread. College football week 3 is in the books. Week 4 here for us. Very excited. Great week, both gambling wise for me, and also just some really good games. This past week, I had a blast watching them. I mean, starting off headline, App State is like must watch TV now, isn't it?
I they so I talked to an App State grad this afternoon, and he told me, he was like, I went to App State for game day, and I told my friends who are still there, this won't get any better, so just enjoy it now. And then they hit a Hail Mary and stormed the field. So I don't know what App State's gonna do next to one up their most recent performance, but they've been something else, man. And this week they get JMU, and they have a game against Marshall in 2 weeks.
Those are
So
two
they're
great
appointment
games coming up.
television at this
Yeah,
point. Until they stop like having the most entertaining games possible, they are going to be just you've got to bookmark them and get them on a screen somewhere, because something crazy is going to happen.
yeah, and I mean that. So I don't know if people heard the radio call. Maybe I'll edit and put it into the show here.
With everybody back to try to knock one down. 3-man rush. Chase going to step up in the pocket. Sets. Throws high into the air. It's up for grabs. It is juggled. He got it! It's a touchdown! It's a touchdown! It's a touchdown! Miracle on the mount! Miracle part 2! It's miracle part 2! Oh, they did it! Don't give up on this! Oh my gosh! Don't you do it, baby! Don't you give up on these Mountaineers, baby! Yes, sir! Oh my gosh! Yes, sir! What a play! Deflected back into the arms of Christian Horde. They storm the field. App State wins on Miracle on the Mountain Part 2.
At like a break, but it's like it's tipped, and then the two radio announcers. If you watched it on TV, you wouldn't have heard this, but the two radio announcers basically just started screaming like it was inaudible.
It was
screaming.
like if you and I did a game.
Yeah, like two of this. Granted, they were so excited, but it would be like if I mean, it was probably one of the best walk-off Hail Marys I've seen in my lifetime. It has to be top 3 up there with like the one, and it wasn't really a walk-off Hail Mary, but the game against the Saints where the Vikings won on like basically an out route that a missed tackle happened on in the playoffs. Like that was
the miracle in Minneapolis.
Yeah, that was like the level of holy shit, they just got that. Like,
yeah, I think mine is probably the one where they put defensive genius and all-time football coach Bill Belichick put Gronk at safety.
Gronk in the back end. Yeah, that was like how surprising this was. Just seeing them, like you're like, oh, he doesn't even have the arm to get it to the end zone, and then it's tipped, caught, wheel around. Oh, it was so much fun. And I mean, game day being there probably just made it that much better too.
Yeah, the like above stadium shots were great. Like Chase Bryce was helping kids climb down from the stands.
Yeah,
onto the field.
Saw that.
So just all around, just great scenes in Boone. Gotta love Boone. Boone's a great
and you love to see it happen to like schools that maybe don't always get that brand recognition because they're a G5 school, right? But then it like a storyline catches and people just like start to watch and love like a team like that. Like so it makes college football so great. That's why like college football is probably the greatest thing man has ever been given.
Yes,
by God.
yeah, that's the pinnacle of human civilization.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of moving on. So the only other headlines I think that were major headlines this week, like kind of all around from a coaching standpoint. So Herm Edwards is out at Arizona State.
Did you see there's a rumor he got fired on the field?
Yeah, I saw the video too. It was... I mean, it wasn't not convincing, basically, the video. So for those who didn't see the video on Twitter, Herm Edwards comes off. He's walking with the police officer. They've just lost a game they should have won. He's walking with the police officer off the field with his players, sees the AD and the president of the school, walks over to them, and they they have what looks like a somewhat brief conversation, but one that may have. Granted, I don't think this actually happened because that would be a wildly incompetent thing, but it almost looks like they're like, "Hey, we're just gonna not have you as our coach anymore." And he was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." Like that's how the conversation looked.
Yeah, it looked like I think there's some like internet Reddit sleuths that are trying to lip read like whether or not he's saying like it's done, or like what
The same
Herm's
people
saying.
who track private planes from
Yeah,
different
exactly. Yeah,
airports.
I don't. So, like, if this were an SEC school, we'd have the whole transcript from like Billy Ray, the lip reader. But it's Arizona State, so I don't think there's anybody on the internet that cares enough.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think maybe he was fired on site, which would be I would kind of respect it. Like, don't even let him give the speech.
yeah, I would too. I mean, I wouldn't. I'm surprised that there are some teams week 17 in football who like don't come out with the president and are like, yeah, we kind of decided well before this game that, so and so is fired, but we let him finish out the season, but he's not going to give this last presser or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, they just give it to like a walk on for no real reason.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Colorado also had aside from ASU, Colorado had to put out a statement saying we understand like we're getting our asses kicked, but basically that they're not yet going to fire Carl Dorrell. But it sounds like they're probably going to fire him. I don't know what the buyout situation is over there. I don't know what their financials look like. And then one you have to imagine is on the hot seat at this point, even if it's not declared. Brian Harsin over at Auburn. I mean, Auburn's gotten their ass kicked.
well,
Week in.
with all of the investigation and
Yeah, the
the
kerfuffle from
that went
last.
on in the off season, the only way Brian Harsin was really going to save his job, and I don't know like what the dynamics. Everybody refers to Auburn in the same way that they talk about Texas, as far as like the donor dynamics and the politics behind the university that sort of make these decisions. Um, I don't know what specifically this is. Like, I don't know if it's just like he's an outsider because he came from Boise State and they wanted somebody who had been in the SEC before, and they just like this was like a buyer's remorse contract the
Mm,
second that they signed it with him. Um, and I think there may have been some concerns that they were getting dominated in recruiting, and he's not the recruiter that they thought he would be,
yeah,
which is especially embarrassing when you look at kind of what Billy Napier's already building at Florida and some of the other hires recently in the SEC and what they've been able to do. I think Shane Beamer is a good example of that too. Um, I think that's where some of this started, and yeah, I mean. It's not going to happen. He was going to have to go probably 8-4 ish, 9-3 roughly to save his job this year, and that was just never going to happen with their schedule. So
yeah. I'll
he was doomed from the jump. But you go out and lay an egg like that against a non conference opponent at home, like if you had some things that broke the wrong way for your team in the middle of that game where the administration could at least see it, but they got manhandled by a
They got
team not
manhandled
from the SEC.
41-12 by Penn State
Yeah,
at home.
and more so just they like yes, I get it. Penn State has 2 5-star running backs who are way better than we thought they are, but the other part too is that they got dominated on the offensive and defensive front, and
Yeah.
that as an SEC school, a self-respecting SEC school, which we could debate what that means to Auburn, but they can't have that happen. So I think he's already the nail's already in the coffin. That to be honest, the boosters are probably just raising the funds to afford another multi-million-dollar buyout.
Yeah, my so for those who aren't as in tune with scheduling as we like to be on the show, so they have Missouri at home. They're 7-point favorites, and then this is the next 7 or 8. This is the next 8 weeks for Auburn. Uh, LSU at home, at Georgia, at Mississippi, Arkansas at home, at Mississippi State, Texas A&M at home, before finishing out with Western Kentucky at home, who's not actually a very bad team. They that might be like an upset after that brutal 6 weeks, 7 week stint, and then they finish up with the Iron Bowl Well, they'll be playing Alabama, who probably can't afford to lose at that point, with how the schedule might pan out.
I
So
mean,
I
it's
mean,
also just the Iron Bowl. Like,
yeah, and they're 2-1 right now. So let's play a game of pick the other 4 wins out, because there's a chance Auburn's not making a bowl game this year with that
yeah,
kind of schedule. I mean, sure, let's say they beat Western Kentucky and Missouri, like that's great, but unless they upset LSU or Mississippi State, I don't really see them pulling away against Georgia, A&M, Arkansas, Mississippi.
yeah, none of those. Yeah, it's going to be an
So
ugly year that will end up with him getting fired, and then I
probably
don't know who, like, is Lance Leipold at the top of the list from Kansas, because he's just finding ways to win at schools where nobody should ever win. I don't think that he's necessarily the guy that they need, like, or that they really want. Like, they
right.
probably, I would assume that they want somebody who's going to come in and prioritize recruiting and be Kirby Smart with the more hair. I don't know. I don't know what they're looking for, but it's going to be difficult to find because it feels like the shifts all happened in the last job market. So I don't know how
Mhm.
many candidates are really going to rise up to the level of they're ready to take on a job like Auburn.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's move on, because we've talked about some teams that are historically doing bad. Let's talk about the good and the bad from this week. Good and bad performances. Um, I think we both kind of had the same general idea of USC played very well, Oklahoma played very well. Michigan seems to be dominating very good teams. We'll see if that translates in the next couple of weeks to them
Very bad
keeping them.
teams.
Yes, I'm sorry. They're beating very bad teams by a lot of points. So let's see if
Yeah.
that translates. Unfortunately, we won't really see if it translates until they play Ohio. But Penn State, NC State, Oregon, the good of this week, and then
Well, I mean, Michigan gets Penn State before that. I don't know that we really count Michigan State in that anymore after the way that they looked against
they
Washington.
always do love to shock everybody and beat Michigan, but I just don't know if that happens this year with expectations.
Yeah, I think if McCarthy plays the whole game, there's not really a shot for Michigan State this year, especially going to Michigan. And after the way that game went last year and the season, they would have been undefeated going into the playoff, um, and it wouldn't have changed anything because they would have gotten Georgia anyway. But um, I think that there's a sour taste in Michigan's mouth from that game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Harbaugh can really beat the crap out of Michigan State this year, he'll do it because
Yeah.
I think he knows that another defeat of Ohio State is less likely this year.
So give me your top 3 to 4 performances from this week, and then give me your like bottom 3 to 4, because I'm interested to see what you say.
Good, best or most impressive?
Let's go most impressive and least impressive. So
Okay,
even if you didn't lose, what was like on the
out of
bad
the
side?
ranked
Yeah.
out of the ranked cohort here, I think I'm gonna give you three. I think what Oregon was able to do finally was very like BYU. Granted, they were always in a letdown spot. I really liked Oregon in that game. I should have added it to the card, but I think more so the
BYU
way that
fan.
they were able to move the ball offensively. I thought that they would, if they were going to win, it would be a one possession game. That they would win it with defense. And Dan Lanning would kind of instill this physicalness and toughness that would take over in a close game against a team that had just won a
A
double over.
shootout overtime.
Yeah,
Yeah, overtime shootout.
that their offense looked fantastic. They ran the ball right down BYU's throats, which, as we said last week, is just a team of 26-year-old men. And they really manhandled them and took them out of that game immediately. They managed the game well. They looked well coached. They looked very comfortable, and they looked like they knew they were the better team. So I give Dan Lanning a lot of credit after the start to the year of going to that game and getting
Georgia and
embarrassed the way they
yes,
were to really
embarrassed is a very good
to get off the
term.
mat with just a week against a tomato can and then come out against another ranked team and play with enough confidence to win the game the way they did. I thought that was really impressive. Penn State was next. I don't particularly believe in Sean Clifford, but that was another game where it didn't matter really. I mean, Clifford was great, and he played and did what he needed to do. But I was more impressed with the team, the rest of the team around Penn State, and the way that they played, more so offensively, and the way they were able to run the ball. And their running backs are so good, and they're both freshmen. They're going to be scary, scary good for the next couple of years. They're the 5-star they brought in at the end of the game is going to take over from Clifford next year, and they are going to be a dynamic offense, and they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then I think I would say I'm gonna mention USC, but they're not my third team. Lincoln Riley just did it again, like we said last week. It's just their offense is poetry in motion. They walk down the field. It doesn't even look like they're even interested to some extent in like the game because it's too easy to them. So I like more of the same from USC. Not, but I'm gonna go with Oklahoma in that game started like it was gonna be the charged up interim coach wins one for the Gipper, and Oklahoma walked. They walked out. They punted. They went 3-and-out on a Nebraska defense that's been horrible, and then Nebraska went all the way down the field and scored, and then Oklahoma buckled their chin strap and railed off like 41 consecutive points.
Yeah.
Like, just like a game that could have very easily gotten away from them. I don't know who grabbed who on the sideline and said, "Hey, just remember we're way better than them," and then they went out and did it. So,
They're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
so those are my three most impressive performances.
I for me, I think Penn State's win this week. I think it impressed me the most. I had BYU. I thought BYU would certainly keep it close. I thought BYU would win. I really did believe BYU to kind of be those guys. But Penn State, I'm sorry, against Auburn, Penn State. I'm losing my mind. Penn State like dominated Auburn. I thought that was just really impressive. I mean, Singleton had 10 carries for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Creighton Allen had 9 carries for 52 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, they really did have like a running back by committee, but they're two dominant running backs. And the way that they handled themselves, I think if Penn State can be as physical as they showed, I think they're a top 15 team. I don't know that they have the quarterback and receiving core for it, but if their defense holds as well as they have held, right, and they gave up a little passing yards against Auburn, they gave up 300 yards in the air, but they kept them to under 120 yards on the ground and only 12 points. So I think that's really impressive. Penn State coming off of, right now are undefeated, so I think that was great. I'd put Oregon too, and I had BYU, so I thought Oregon, they impressed me with the fact that I thought BYU would keep it close. I was shocked at how that game so quickly looked so lopsided.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I mean, BYU, sure, they were in a letdown spot, but Oregon kept them to 7 points in the first half, another only 14 or 13 points in the second half. And they were BYU was putting it like in the air pretty good, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, but Oregon just the defense of Oregon just really impressed me. And then I would say I think USC is starting to show themselves as one of those elite. I liked how Oklahoma performed. Michigan obviously put away a bad team. NC State played very well. But I think my number 3 is probably USC just because, they came out and they dominated both on the ground and in the air. Multiple 100-yard running backs from multiple TDs. Caleb Williams, looks awesome.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think he's a short list for Heisman. So I think USC probably comes out third for me. Of the bad performances, I think number 1, Auburn for me. I mean, I was watching that game, and I'm not an Auburn fan by any means, but I was sickened by how, and I had Penn State, so I made money off the game, but they look very, very bad. I think my number 2 bad performance is Notre Dame. A lot of miscues. I thought they should have put Cal away pretty early, and it was message board meltdown for Notre Dame. They still pulled out the win, but they did not look good by any means. I'm starting to question Marcus Freeman's lifespan at Notre Dame. I don't think I'm the only one, considering they got their first win last week after getting crushed by Ohio State and then losing to Marshall. I don't know if those are growing pains with a new coach or whatnot, but the the Irish defense played well, but their offense was anemic at times, and I think that's very concerning for a team that has a good defense, but not one that's astounding. So I question whether Notre Dame really has much going forward this year. And then I think the third bad performance, I'm going to go with Texas A&M. They just didn't do much last week that really impressed me. I think, like, I know they won and I know they covered the spread, but that Miami Texas game was ugly. Like, that was really
And
ugly.
they shouldn't have covered. They blocked a field goal, and they missed. I think the Miami kicker missed a chip shot that they would have either one of those hits, and they would have covered because they lost
Yep.
by 8. Spread was 5.5, right? I think closed at 5.5. So
Yeah.
another field goal would have covered, and
So
Miami deserved to cover. I mean, nobody really deserved to win that game, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
I mean, that was an exceptionally bad game for both teams. I'm going to give you some stats here. Max Johnson, quarterback of Texas A&M, 10 for 20 with 140 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, that's gross.
Yeah.
Texas A&M had 260 total yards. Like, they won because of special teams.
Yeah, they won because they flipped the field on that one touchdown by A-Chain. Right,
Yeah.
it was a muff punt, right, that they recovered
Yep.
and then scored. That
And
was the difference in the game.
third down efficiency for both teams was less than 25%. Like,
Yeah.
that's not a game you come out of even though you covered and you're like, oh, we did well. It's like, we should be very, very concerned because we play Arkansas next week. I question what that was, because A&M has a tough schedule ahead of themselves, and I'm not sure that they really have the
Yeah,
stomach.
I agree. I'll go with mine in order, but I did want to look it up. Caleb Williams right now plus 320 to win the Heisman. He's moved in front of Bryce Young as
That
a
doesn't
betting
shock me.
favorite.
It
So
doesn't
that
shock me.
like Vegas sees that too. That he, I mean, right now, like they're gonna. Is there any reason they're not going to score 40 on everybody they play? I mean, maybe Utah or Oregon finds a way to make it a close game, but like they look so good right now, and I'll keep uh, heaping praise on USC in my card, but yeah. So
Yeah,
for
I think
my
the
most
road test is Utah in mid-October for
what
USC. USC plays Utah mid-October. I think
at
that's their
Utah,
first
yeah,
road.
that'll be the first time that if they go out and they put up, I mean, it'll be the same as every Oklahoma team that we've seen Lincoln Riley. One of these games you expect, at least, maybe not in the Pac-12, but you expect one of these games where USC is going to come out a little flat. Somebody might sneak up on them. They get caught in one game, and they're in the mix for the last playoff spot as a one-loss Power Five conference champion. And then they go to the playoff and get dog walked because they haven't recruited any defensive talent yet.
Yeah.
Which we'll see when that day comes, and that would be overwhelming success for Lincoln Riley in his first year at USC.
Oh,
So, like,
absolutely. Yeah.
if anybody's confused, like, or if anybody thinks that that's me knocking them, that's where to basically transfer top tier Power Five programs and not miss a beat at all, and be in a position where he can probably recruit at a higher level defensively than he was able to previously. That he won the divorce immediately.
Correct.
So good for Lincoln Riley. My unimpressive performances are similar. I'm not going to mention Michigan State because I didn't really understand why they were a top 15 team to begin with. Like Peyton Thorne's not
That's
a good
fair.
Peyton Thorne is not a good quarterback. Without Jalen Reed, they are a stagnant Midwestern offense. And I like not that I expected Washington to really dominate them the way that they did because I didn't expect
And
Washington.
they dominated him. I mean,
Yeah,
the
they did.
score does
I
not
mean,
reflect.
the game ended as a 10-point spread, but it should have been 21, something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, it was like 39-13, right? And then Michigan State just kept playing.
Yeah,
Um,
garbage time touchdowns in the fourth quarter when you're down by 20, 30 plus points.
yeah, exactly. That game was not nearly as close as it finished. My number one most disappointing performance is Notre Dame. I'm gonna go with them at the top of the list because that was a game coming off a loss at home, knowing what they have ahead on their schedule. That was a game against Cal based on what Cal has put on tape this year and based on who you have coming up for Notre Dame. And I'll look who Notre Dame has coming up. They needed to go out and win that game convincingly and generate some confidence for the rest of the season, and they didn't do that at all. And it you could say last week. You could say last week that it was kind of a fluke that they sort of expected to walk through Marshall and ramp up through the rest of their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, okay, I get you lose a game there, but then to come out the following week knowing you're about to go on the road to a high powered offense in Carolina, then you get BYU, you come home to play Stanford and UNLV before you get Syracuse, Clemson, Navy, Boston College, USC. So you're like, if you don't come out and start winning some football games convincingly, you go from a top 10 team to like bottom tier bowl.
Yeah,
Um,
and they have they have a they're at UNC this week, as I'm sure you know as a
yeah.
fan of the
No,
team.
I'll be there. I'll be on the
That's a
field for pregame warmups. Yeah,
that's a that's a pick 'em. Notre Dame should be favored. UNC, and I'm not trying to dog your own team, man, but UNC came out flat. I mean, almost lost to App State, who we now identify as a good team, right?
yeah.
But UNC is currently undefeated, but has not by any means looked massively impressive. I don't think.
No,
In fact, that
great offense, maybe the worst defense I've ever seen. Gene Chizik continues to prove that he's a very bad coach. So it will be a very interesting, like styles make fights in this game, and we'll get to that. But um, I in a game Notre Dame sort of had to win and had to win it convincingly against a team that we don't really think is very good. And Cal's probably better than most people think. But a team that they should probably beat by 2 scores at home, traveling from the West Coast. To go out and lay a performance like that where like Cal threw a Hail Mary and almost caught it.
yeah, they're very close to catching it.
So like it's alarming, I think, for Notre Dame to be this far off the pace. And I get that Buchner's hurt, and I get that the offense doesn't look the way that they expected it to. But I mean, they got to put something. Like they got to start putting something together, or this is going to be a very ugly season. I get it. I'm less concerned about Marcus Freeman on the whole because I think he's recruiting better than Brian Kelly ever did. So I think
That's
once
fair.
he gets a quarterback in there and some weapons that can kind of change the way that offense looks, I would expect that they're going to be better because the defense is good. They have a great defensive line. Um, but their defense isn't Iowa good to keep them in some of these games where they otherwise have no business being in. So if they walk into the wrong team, like BYU, that game is going to be a wake
That
up
may
call for them.
Yeah, that may be a very sad game for them. The Notre Dame had was 3 for 12 first downs, ran 64 total plays, and punted 7 times.
Yeah,
That's like
they
not a winning recipe by any
they
means.
decided finally to just run the ball in the second half, basically like out of the shotgun, but halfback dive on every play, and that was finally what broke the back of Cal's defense. I think they went down and scored 2 or 3 touchdowns in a row after that, but it was dicey for Notre Dame there, and if they lose that game, their whole season may change. So I think their performance was probably the most alarming in just in a game where you expected them to come out and have it and put on their best performance to set the stage going forward, they didn't. I think Texas A&M is probably next, only because it's another top 10 team that just doesn't have it. I this is why I was low on Texas A&M to start with, not as a top 16, because like their defense, I'll give their defense a lot of credit because they lost two defensive starters in the secondary before the game started due to suspensions, and then they lost another two due to targeting penalties in the first half. So they had to float the rest of that game against a ranked opponent with all backups in the secondary, and they did it. They got it done. Um, Disappointing for Miami too to not be able to take advantage of a week in Texas A&M there on the road. But that offense is not close to functional, and especially in an SEC West and the schedule they have coming up, they're in serious trouble.
Yeah.
And I would, if I were them, I would consider looking at Connor Wegman, their third string quarterback, because he's like, what Haynes King is. Like Calzada, when Calzada left, Calzada was the guy that got them to beat Alabama. Now, granted, I don't fault them for moving on, but Max Johnson's not. Nothing Max Johnson did yesterday makes me think that, or Saturday makes me think that he's a bona fide, top 25 quarterback. So
Right.
if you've got to find something if you're going to have any sort of success this season in the way that Texas A&M fans and I think their offseason had a lot to do with the misinformation about what this season was supposed to be for Texas A&M, because you pull in the number one recruiting class, you unseat the evil emperor down in Tuscaloosa, but that isn't supposed to change your program overnight. The whole point is that it's a recruiting class that is going to win you a championship 2 years from now. And I think the Texags message boards sort of went nuts immediately and said we are going to be a playoff contender now, and that's just not the reality because they still don't have a quarterback. And then just to add at the end, I could go BYU, but I think that was kind of a predictable spot where they just kind of lost focus for a game. I don't think BYU is as bad as they played. Arkansas in a classic look ahead spot, but Bobby Petrino comes in with an FCS team in Missouri State, and outside of a punt return, they probably lose that game.
Yeah.
Without that punt return to take the lead in the fourth quarter, they probably lose to Bobby Petrino, and he's probably like dancing in the locker room with his neck brace on, like bringing back the glory days from when he was at Arkansas. So I thought it was disappointing because I'll say it's disappointing because you expect a team that you think can be as good as we think Arkansas could be to show up in those games, and that maybe that's a little bit of immaturity. Maybe this is the wake up call they needed. I just thought they were a senior laden team with a lot more experience that wouldn't have shown up in a game like that. So that's why I say it's disappointing. They're not on the card, but I still like Arkansas against Texas A&M because KJ Jefferson's better than anybody Texas A&M is rolling out this week. And granted, they'll get all those defensive players back, but when in doubt, I think in this case, you don't take the team that can't play offense.
That's fair. That's fair.
Let's start talking.
Yeah, let's
speech.
So we'll start off the two probably biggest noon games. Baylor at Iowa State. We'll start with that. Baylor kickoff is at noon, so it's first Big 12 conference showdown. Baylor is actually a 2.5 point dog.
I think they opened as a 2.5 point dog. I don't know what they are now. I'm looking.
I think the line hasn't moved, and the Iowa State Cyclones. So currently undefeated.
Going Iowa State's way.
Yeah, currently undefeated Iowa State at home. So head coach Matt Campbell looks like he's got the team kind of going places. I think it'll be a great matchup. I'm curious as to your thoughts as to who comes out, because Baylor. Not that this is a look ahead by any means, but Baylor has had a gauntlet of games in the first, couple of weeks here.
Yeah, no, I don't know why Baylor's a dog. I don't.
I don't either, which is what scares me. Right, this
Yeah,
definitely stuck out as like a why is Baylor not favored, and
yeah,
then I was like, oh yeah, Iowa State is a lot better than people realize.
because am I supposed to believe that because Iowa State beat Iowa, who's allergic to playing offense, that that's like the win that is supposed to tell me that Iowa State's better than Baylor? Like it doesn't make sense to me. I'm looking at the team metrics on PFF right now. I'll give them the hat tip. Um, Baylor's power ranked 10 spots ahead of them. They're 22nd. Iowa State's 34th. They both have top 15 defenses, but on offense, Baylor is still ranked as the 23rd best offense. Iowa State is 75th. And you could say, yes, they played Iowa, but Baylor played BYU, who is a better team, and played them. And granted, now they went on the road and lost in overtime, but Iowa State got that Iowa game was at home, right?
Yeah, they played Iowa State played Iowa at Iowa, so they
Okay,
were
so
away from
so
home.
it's a road win, but
A good road win, but Iowa State. So they put up 43 against Ohio and 42 against Southeastern Missouri. So not like,
sweet.
yeah, yeah. Hunter Deckers maybe can pull something off. I don't know.
I like, but here's the thing: is if you're saying Iowa State is ranked higher because of their win, their strength of schedule played. Iowa State's 96th, Baylor's 100th, so they're only separated by 4 spots on strength of schedule. So I like. Um, to me here, take the bigger or take the better. They're the better team. Baylor's the better team on paper. They have the better offensive line. They have a better quarterback. I, I take. I get it. They're going on the road. They're going to Iowa State. The Iowa State will be fired up in a ranked matchup, but not really somewhere where we go a particularly difficult place to play. Give me, it's on the card. I have Baylor plus. I got them at plus 106. In a in the money line, taking a money line. I think they win this game. I don't see why Iowa State beats them.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and I know Baylor played a tough game, but this is not a look ahead by any means for them. Conference play means a lot to these guys, so I'm curious as to why Iowa State was favored. Granted, they played, they beat Iowa. They only scored 10 points in that game. Their offense looks good, but it's hard to judge when the teams you've played is two, FCS teams and then Iowa, who historically speaking is a very good defensive football team, but not one that has a strikingly amazing offense.
It
Um,
is, yeah, it is. I see what you're saying. I didn't realize they had Oklahoma State next week at home. I think, yeah, your conference opener is tough to overlook here in this spot. When especially Dave Aranda, a great coach, and he's gonna let them know that they're underdogs in this game. Um, so I don't think the look ahead spot is as big a concern here. I really like Baylor here.
I do as well. All right, moving on. Start a conference play in multiple conferences this week of the top 25. So the other noon game, really looking forward to Clemson at Wake Forest. Clemson is a 7-point favorite, 6.5-point favorite against Wake Forest, but these two teams don't like each other. Clemson dealing with a few defensive injuries, I think, but curious to see where you side, if you side with either of these teams on how they're going to play.
So I like Wake in this spot. I If Brzee comes back, which is a really sad story for those who don't know, his younger sister unfortunately passed away of cancer. Um, so he was out. He's been out. I think the past 2 weeks. He may come back for this game. Right now, all these stats are from PFF, so I don't have to keep telling you where they're from. But PFF has their adjusted line at Wake +6, where the market has it at +7, +7.5. So PFF thinks that Wake's a full point better than the spread. My thing here is I don't. I've been on this train from I had Clemson as an under for their team total. I don't trust DJ as a quarterback, and I think this is going to be the start of a string of games where we find out if I was right. Um, and it starts in this game because they are going to have to score. They like I get it. Their defense is all world. Wake has a very, very smart, savvy veteran quarterback and some great receivers, and they're at home. They're gonna if they put up points early and they can get out to a lead, this turns into can DJ do it? And I don't think he can. I think this starts to turn the tide towards Klubnik. I've said I think Klubnik will be starting by the end of the year. I still think that's true. I get DJ had a they played Furman and who else? Another tomato can. Um, the past 2 weeks, and it looks like their offense is fixed. They still haven't played anybody good. I think this is going to be the first environment, and I don't discredit what my eyes saw in that first half against Georgia Tech, a team that just got mollywopped by uh, Ole Miss, the way that a team should beat them because they were down 31-0 at half. Um, Oh yeah, they beat Louisiana Tech 48-20. They beat Furman and they beat Louisiana Tech. Not necessarily selling me on the fact that DJ has fixed the problems and the offense is back to the Taj Boyd, Deshaun sort of levels,
Mm.
Trevor Lawrence sort of levels. So uh, yeah, give me Wake here as a home dog, especially more than a touchdown. I love them in a ranked matchup at home to at least keep it to a score. Now Clemson may win, but I think this is going to be a really close game.
I am actually on the other side. I think this is one of those games where Dabo doesn't typically lose, and I think what we're seeing is that maybe Clemson's off year was last year, and even though they're not as good as they should be, I don't think Clemson should be ranked 5, but I also think that they come out against Wake. Um, and I kind of believe in DJ a little bit more than you do, probably. I just, he's put up some good numbers. He's had good accuracy over the past couple weeks. I think Wake will probably be a little more difficult, but I think I saw a number at at minus 6.5. So I like Clemson by a touchdown. Probably, um, you know, 2 touchdowns. I think 14. Clemson might pull out by 14. To be honest with you,
I
I
I mean
also
I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. The last thing I'll say in support of my own argument: Clemson gets NC State at home next week. You can't. It's hard to overlook a ranked matchup, but when you have another one, a bigger one
yeah.
on the backside, it it gets easier to overlook it. And granted, I for the same reason, I don't think they're in a look ahead spot, or that Baylor's not in a look ahead spot. I don't think Clemson is either. I think they have to take this game seriously. Um, but I bring it up to bring it up.
That's a good point. I still like Clemson. I'm sticking with Clemson -7. We'll move on though. Florida at Tennessee, 3:30 CBS Saturday is the SEC kickoff that CBS always does. This should be a fun game. I think so. Florida's like 11 or 12-point dogs right now, and the line is moving in Tennessee's favor. And I don't necessarily know why that is. Um, I thought Florida +11 seemed like a good bet that I have already put in. Uh, but there's something about this game where like these teams kind of always wake up for each other. So I'm kind of confused as to why. And I get Tennessee's a good team, but it's a SEC matchup. Like you don't typically see those for those like higher middle of the pack SEC teams. You don't typically see those guys more than a touchdown favorite usually sometimes. And Florida's not bad. We've seen Florida perform very well. Now, I will say Florida performed shitty last week against South Florida, but I think that was a product of it being a look-ahead game. They were 24-point favorites. They only won by 3.
Yeah, could have
But I
easily that game could have easily gone to overtime.
yes, but so here's the problem, right? I think I think Anthony Richardson is really good. I think the Gators got into a classic look ahead game, and I think they're a lot better than maybe their record has shown. I know that seems weird, considering they lost to Kentucky and then barely scraped out against Florida, or yeah, South Florida. But 11 points seems like too much to me. I think Florida's a very good team. I think Tennessee's a very good team. I'm not sold on their performance yet, though. I mean, they've played, like you kind of like to say, two tomato can teams, and then the only real quality win they've had so far has been Pittsburgh, and we have probably seen Pittsburgh is underperforming expectations this year. I'm not saying Hendon Hooker's bad by any means, or that Tennessee can't pull out a win, but 11 points for me seems a little high for Anthony Richardson to be expected to not just kind of run all over Tennessee. I'm curious as to what you think.
Yeah, I think Tennessee should be favored.
By 11
Florida.
or 12, though?
So
That's
so on Florida, I can't tell if the carriage is turning back into a pumpkin from the week one win over Utah,
yeah.
and this is what they always were, or if they've just had two bad games in a row.
Yeah, and I guess this is like the show me game, right? Like
Yeah,
if Florida
exactly.
comes out
And
and dominates, they might.
which I think the win over Utah kind of created expectations that now have been let down based on their really like toothless performance against Kentucky. No offense to the states of Florida and Kentucky.
I would
And
call their performance this past week pretty toothless too.
yeah, that well, I mean that too. But also, again, no offense to Florida or South Florida, all of which have tooth problems. Um, But so I balance that against. You're right. I don't know if Tennessee is the team that we think they are, and I think they are, but I don't know that. I hate this. I hate this spread. I hate this spread. I hate it. I would hate this spread anywhere from 6.5 to 14.5. I think something around a touchdown is probably more accurate, but I don't know what that like that if you told me Tennessee wins by 28, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me Florida wins by 10, I wouldn't be surprised. It's just there's so much volatility here. I'm not touching this game. I because granted, like on paper, Tennessee should beat Florida. Tennessee is a more complete team. They have a more consistent quarterback, if not a better quarterback. Not saying that Hendon Hooker is better than Anthony Richardson. I think Richardson, when he's playing his best, is way better. But I think that Hooker's more consistent. The offense runs more consistently. He's got better weapons. They've got a better defense. Tennessee should be the team that's favored, but they're also Tennessee. So I don't know what's going to happen. Like I have no idea. So I'm staying completely away from this game. I think it'll be one of those games where you just turn it on at 3:30. You hear Brad Nessler's voice make you feel like you're at grandma's house, and you just watch this game for the enjoyment of it. I'm not touching the line. I'm not touching the total. I have no idea what's going to happen. This game is just an absolute crystal meth wild card.
Moving on, Oregon at Washington State should be a pretty good one. 4 p.m. Saturday. I don't have any wagers for this one. I think it'll be interesting to see if Oregon kind of keeps up its performance after its win last week. But I'm curious as to what you have on this one.
Yeah, I have Oregon -6. I am scared, but I'm riding with it. I am scared because Washington State looked very good against Wisconsin, and we still don't know if that was Wisconsin being worse than they thought. I
Or
have been a
Washington
Washington
State
State
being better.
believer all year, and this is a scary spot to send a team coming off a ranked win that they absolutely needed to a game in Pullman where crazy things happen because it's Pullman,
Yeah.
Washington. Um, so if I'll be kicking myself if this doesn't turn out the way that I think it will, but I do think that if Oregon shows up with the confidence they played with this weekend, they should win this game, and they should win it by at least 2 scores.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I do probably side with Oregon. Of note, this is probably Oregon's last test until like mid-November when they have Washington at home and then Utah at home the next week.
Yeah, so there's no reason for Oregon to really overlook this game. I think
Correct.
Washington State will be geared up for this game. So that's the only thing that scares me. I think this game is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think 4 o'clock. This might be appointment viewing along with that Florida Kentucky game because it's going to be a great atmosphere. And I think that there could be some craziness that goes on towards the end of this game, which isn't good for me having the favorite. But I think if Oregon shows up the way that they showed up this past week, and Dan Lanning has really gotten these guys to buy in and believe in what he's doing, they should win this game by a couple scores.
Moving on, Wisconsin is at Ohio State, or I'm sorry, Yes, at Ohio State at 7:30. I am so lost on Wisconsin this year. Like I don't know if they're a good team or a bad team. I think they're an average team.
Yes.
I think that like 2 years ago they outperformed expectations, and it just messed with my brain because I was like, oh, Wisconsin's good, and I just have never recovered from that. I mean, they lost to Washington State. We just talked about that. They are 2-1. They did put up 66 points against an FCS team last week. I am curious as to whether this Ohio State team though is going to destroy Wisconsin. I have put Ohio State on my card. I went back and forth. Originally, I was thinking Wisconsin. I just don't believe in them. Honestly, I'm curious as to your thoughts.
Yeah. So the way I look at this game, and one, I think Wisconsin lost a decent amount on defense. That
Yeah,
has been
their
difficult to
injury
replace.
report is not good.
Um,
They're missing a cornerback, a safety, tight end, outside linebacker, and quarterback Chase Wolf, who is
backup.
backup.
I it's I think Wisconsin's closer to average than good. Now they may still be good enough to win the West, but I don't think that they're a top 25 team. And I think it's sad because I think Braylon Allen might be maybe the best running back in the country at 18 years old. And they're going to waste him this year because they are Wisconsin. And they're going to waste him all 4 years because they're Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, but what I think changes the dynamic of this game from a spread perspective is I think that Ohio State is starting to find whatever they didn't have against Notre Dame. And I think this is the game where we realize they found it because I think that everybody expected this year they would go in, they would throw the ball to Jackson Smith and Jigba like 97 times a game, and they would roll over everybody. And I think when he went out that first game, they got a little desynchronized. But you've seen the past couple games, it hasn't been Smith and Jigba. Has he even played? I don't think so.
No, not really.
Yeah. But Marvin Harrison Jr. is for real. And the rest of their weapons that they have recruited that are serious athletes are starting to play like they're serious athletes. And I think this is the game where we remember that they are that team. And I think that they win by either 21 or 28, but I think this is like a sort of what we expected. Like to me, it's just I have Ohio State minus 17.5. Ohio State's more than 18 points better than Wisconsin, and they show up and they play like it, especially at home. I don't see how this game ends with less than a 21-point spread, and so I'm going to take Ohio State here.
Yeah, I have Ohio State here too.
The only way you really get screwed here to me is if you get backdoored, but normally that happens with a team that runs a spread offense that continues to throw down. That's not Wisconsin. Wisconsin is about the anti-spread. They're a dry rub. They're just a rolling ball of meat that plods along.
And then probably the best game of the week. We'll move on here. Arkansas at Texas A&M, 7 p.m. Saturday. I think it'll be the best SEC matchup this week. Arkansas is +2. I'm hoping Arkansas is better than we saw last week. I think Arkansas was in a look ahead, so there's some hope there
Yeah.
from that kind of perspective. But Arkansas still is undefeated. A&M obviously had that App State loss. Um, I mean, this is going to be a fantastic game, but I have Arkansas +2. I'm probably taking Arkansas money line. I think Arkansas is the better team. I think A&M was very, very overhyped this year. I think there was some questions as to what the hell happened in that App State loss. They looked good this past weekend, kind of, maybe not really even. So I think they were kind of in a look ahead too. But I question whether the A&M team that we see on the field is capable of playing to the potential that people thought they had at the beginning of the season. And I think this is a game that Arkansas like wakes the fuck up for. So I think this start with Arkansas heading to A&M. I know it's tough to play at A&M and it'll be a night game, so it'll be like crazy
No,
good.
it's neutral site. It's at Jerry World.
It's at Jerry World. Oh, I love Arkansas then.
Yeah, they always play
I
this game at
love
Jerry World.
Arkansas in this case. Yeah. I didn't realize it. This is one of those ones where it's like it's at a neutral site, but it's in Texas. But Jerry World, Jerry went to Arkansas. So I like Arkansas here. I think they're just the better team, honestly. I don't know about you.
Yeah, this game is more of a rivalry for Arkansas than it is for Texas A&M. You combine that with
Yes.
the fact that last year Arkansas went into this game with a lot of expectations and got blown out. I remember that because I was at a wedding and I watched that happen on a laptop and had Arkansas in that game. So that was an incredibly frustrating watch before the wedding started, and then yeah, I like this once again. I use the same logic as Baylor. Go take in a close game. Take the team with the better quarterback and better offensive line. Right now, that's undoubtedly Arkansas.
Yep.
I didn't put it on my card because I didn't like. It's just I don't want to get sucked into betting in Virginia, not North Carolina. Betting against Texas A&M again and losing this spread again because it would just be very frustrating.
Yeah.
And I just had other picks that I like better. But yeah, I think Arkansas wins this game. I do. I don't hate the money line pick. I actually love it. It's just I don't want to get burned again. So I'm
That's
staying
fair.
away from it. But I think it's the right call.
All right, well, let's get into picks. We're gonna kind of push through these because we've had a lot of talking about a lot of things so
Yeah.
far. I am 14-8-1 on the season. I went 10-4 last week, so that was pretty great. I'll just go through my card
That's
and then
awesome.
yeah, I'll go through my card and then you can go through yours and we'll finish up. Talked about Clemson -7, Michigan -17.5 versus Maryland. Maryland is definitely a good team, but Michigan I think just kind of puts on the points, looking to keep that number 4 slot. Baylor +2. We talked about it. I have Penn State -26 against Central Michigan. Again, two 5-star running backs. I don't see Central Michigan holding them to less than 4 touchdowns. UCLA -21.5 at Colorado. Colorado just released a statement saying how much they suck, and please don't get mad at their coach. So obviously that means this week's going to go horrible for them. That's just one of those things. Florida +11. Talked about it. Notre Dame in a pick'em at UNC. This is just one of those ones. I'm sorry, Mike. Where, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I think Notre Dame is better than what they've shown, or at least have the capability to be. And I think UNC did not show me some love early in the year. Texas -6.5 at Texas Tech. These two teams hate each other. These games are always a shootout. Texas really impressed me against
Well,
Alabama.
Texas Tech hates Texas way more than Texas hates.
I think they hate each other just as much. Texas Tech certainly hates them, but Texas Tech is not good if you've watched them play, and Texas almost beat Alabama. I think regardless of who's starting quarterback for Texas, I think their defense is really something special. So I'm going with Texas Tech, or Texas -6.5. Cal -6 versus Arizona. Just a gut feeling that they're pissed off that the loss in Notre Dame. Arkansas +2. USC -6.5 at Oregon State. Oregon State's a good team, but USC has that dog in them. They're covering machine so far, so I'm picking USC. I have BYU minus 22.5 versus Wyoming. Wyoming is bad. Wyoming played well yesterday or last week, and BYU's coming off a bad loss. I'm thinking they're looking to smack somebody down. SMU and a pick'em versus TCU. These teams also don't like each other. SMU's at home. That's the only logic behind that pick and a pick'em. Coastal Carolina -3 at Georgia State. Coastal Carolina sneaky good. Georgia State not sneaky good. So they're 3 points doesn't make sense to me. I think it should be a touchdown. West Virginia -3 versus Virginia Tech. West Virginia, pretty good team. Virginia Tech here and there, but even on an away, I think
They
-3.
didn't. I watched the first quarter of that game they played last week against Wofford, and it was not impressive.
Correct.
I think Brett Pry is a great recruiter, and they're gonna be good. But they're not good offensively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then my pick of the month and or year, Utah -15. The line is actually trending towards ASU, so it's now at 14. So I got it at a bad line, but Utah is going to dominate ASU. ASU just fired their coach. They haven't even named an interim. This program is not getting itself together in 4 days to play Utah. So I fucking love Utah here. Utah, I think, wins by 28. So I put a heavy bet on Utah 4 units for my game of the month and or year, depending how it turns out. And that's my picks. Mike, go ahead.
They are also at home, I believe, right?
They're at ASU. They are not at
Oh,
home.
they are. I wrote that wrong. Okay. I have Virginia +9.5 at Syracuse. I'm gonna keep picking against Syracuse until I'm right, because I lost this Purdue game on a ridiculous last second drive for Syracuse. I get Virginia hasn't been the impressive team that we thought they are, but a veteran quarterback traveling on the road to an environment that, let's call it, less than hostile at the Carrier Dome. I get that they have generated some momentum. I still like UVA to keep it within a score. I think Syracuse is a average to above average team that is not easily capable of blowing out other Power 5 teams. Give
That's
me
fair.
Virginia +9.5. Same thing for our same time slot Friday night. Air Force -24.5 against Nevada. Nevada might be worse than Hawaii, which is really difficult to do.
That sounds impossible.
Yeah, through 2 lightning delays on Saturday night against Iowa in a game that ended at, I think, 2:45 in the morning.
It started at 3 p.m. and it ended at 2. It was a 12-hour affair. It went later than the night games.
Yeah.
I think Hawaii was the only game that ended.
Nevada, I believe Nevada still got shut out, and they now play Air Force, who's actually good. This spread should be bigger. I don't know why it's so low. We talked Wake Forest. I'm on Wake +7.5. I also have Baylor to pick them +106. I'm riding with you on Penn State -26. They win this game by 35 easily. Texas, I'm also going to go -4. Texas Tech, they're not in a look-ahead spot for the Red River game. They have West Virginia coming to town in between those two. You're right. This is a rivalry. I like Texas here. I think they proved last week in a game they should have been in a letdown spot in against UTSA. To me, a game I picked UTSA, and they showed up and beat
I had
them by
UTSA
21.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, which they were supposed to do. So really impressive win for them. I think they continue to run against a Texas Tech team that really got stomped by NC State physically last week. So I expect Texas to win that game. Talk to Oregon -6 at Washington State. I'm going to take Cal off their close loss against Notre Dame. They're at home getting Arizona, and they're only a 6-point favorite. I think people still think that Arizona's good somehow. They're not. They got dominated by a Mississippi State team that just got dominated by an LSU team. I know transitive property doesn't always work in college football. I like Cal to beat Arizona by a touchdown. I'm going to take Rutgers +7.5 against Iowa at home. I think this is finally the week where the wheels fall off for Iowa. They somehow keep managing to stay competitive and win games where they don't play offense. Like they don't play any offense, and they somehow
their plan is to punt to get field position. That's
yes. Rutgers is competent. And I think their competence keeps this within a touchdown. So give me Rutgers at home in a game they'll be fired up for. Rutgers gets up for these games; they're undefeated.
Yeah,
Give
I
me,
like that pick.
yeah, give me Rutgers plus 7.5 here.
Rutgers and Maryland, two teams that always seem to upset someone once every like
Yes,
3 years.
exactly. Give me
Games they absolutely should not win.
this is the week they sneak up on somebody. Now, I hate that you brought up Maryland because this has shades of Maryland last year, where Iowa went to Maryland on a weeknight where they were like Maryland was, I think, a 10-point dog, and everybody in the world was riding them, and Iowa won I think they had 3 pick sixes and won like 35-3. But I hate that you did that, but I'm sticking with the pick. Ohio. We talked to Ohio State minus 17.5 versus Wisconsin. They're the better team. I'm going to keep riding the OU train. They should have covered against Kent State. They dominated Nebraska. Kansas State off a loss to Tulane. I get that they're going to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma tends to flub a spot like this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they flub this spot. I think Kansas State may play them close. I think OU is good enough to win by 2 touchdowns. I think their offense is rolling. Give me them by 13. I'm with you on Utah, minus 14.5 versus ASU, and then we're locking horns. I will be at the game Saturday, UNC in a pick'em, minus 114. Here's the logic here. Notre Dame still can't play offense. Granted, UNC can't play defense, but
a very movable object meets a very
yes, it's a very movable object meets a very stoppable force. For Notre Dame's offense versus UNC's defense. On the other side of the football is going to be a very, very entertaining matchup to watch. Drake May has been incredible. He didn't throw his first pick until the third quarter of the Georgia State game.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially for college.
Very good.
Very good.
Yeah, he is. He might be the second best quarterback coming out next year besides Caleb Williams. That's how good he's looked through the first 3 games. Granted, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but he looks fantastic. They get Josh Downs back. I think that UNC has enough offensive firepower to win this game at home. UNC's last home game was Florida A&M in week 0, and they haven't lost since. So the UNC crowd will be fired up this weekend. I will be there. We will all be there. We're going to win this game. Take UNC at home. We win.
Okay. I'm honoring you by this. I'm taking Notre Dame off my card.
Let's go.
You sold me. I can't root against the homie. So I'll take it off my card. I won't. I may bet the under. I'm sorry if that offends, but
I don't care. I don't care if we win 2-0.
Either of these fucking teams can score.
Yeah.
But
well,
I'm taking
UNC can, and I think if they get the ball out quick on this defensive line, they have the players on the edge to score some points. If Notre Dame goes down early, they ain't coming back. The only way that this is my thing. UNC will always have a shot in this game because if the offense figures it out, they have a chance to come back at any point. If Notre Dame goes down in this game, they ain't coming back. If they have to throw the football the entire game, they're going to lose.
They have not been throwing the football well. Well, I think that is our show. We think this is the longest episode we've ever done, but it was a great week of college football, and we had a shit ton of picks. I said to you, I texted you, I said, I have like 35 picks, and you're like, there's no fucking way.
It was during.
I narrowed it down.
It was during the NFL. It just threw my whole week off. You were like, I've got 25 plays. I'm like, okay, great.
And then we both love the board. Well, that's our show for this week. Check out our episode coming out for NFL football tomorrow. Lots to talk about. I'm going to motherfuck Kirk Cousins until I die. We'll talk about that. The
Jets won a game.
But this has been Stupid versus the Spread. Thank you for watching.